From the pages of history, it's clear as day that Africa has had it worse than all other continents. From the Atlantic slave trade, where Europeans transported enslaved Africans to America and used them for slave labor, to the invasion of Africa by the colonialists, where the black man had to live in harsh conditions in his own territories. It wasn't until World War II where European countries' grip on Africa was weakened and liberators like Samora Machel, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, and Nelson Mandela led the people into freedom. Join me in my video where I'll be trying as best as I can to answer why is Africa so poor but yet so rich. Before we get into this video, let me give a shout out to our friends at Kumusha Podcast. Kumusha Podcast is the hardest podcast in town, where they bring in guest celebrities like Bazooka, Sulumani Chimbetu, and Boy Shona. So if it's something that you will be interested in, please check them out and tell them MuQundwa sent you. Really appreciate it. Now, on with the video. Africa is the world's second largest continent, with a population of 1.5 billion people. Africa is a real gem, as it's filled with diverse and beautiful landscapes which are spread across all of its borders. Making today's list is the memorable Table Mountain, which is located in South Africa. One of the world's natural seven wonders, Mosi Oatunya, popularly known as Victoria Falls, located in Zimbabwe. River Nile, one of the world's longest rivers, number 2 to be exact, which spreads across 11 different countries in Africa. Africa is wildlife like no one's business. Africa is home to lions because of its thriving savanna ecosystem, which provides space for hunting and prey to eat. It takes pride in the fact that it hosts 81% of the world's population of lions. Speaking of a thriving savanna ecosystem, there are more than 1,000 mammal species that can be found. This is where the largest migration of animals happens, where animals move across the Serengeti and Mara plains in search of food and water. With great power comes great responsibility, as poachers pose a threat of extinction on animals like rhinos and elephants. It's no surprise that tourism is a thriving industry in Africa, with countries like South Africa taking the lead, as it is famous for having one of the biggest national parks. Tanzania's Serengeti National Park, which is famous for the great wildlife migration, which involves millions of zebras, wildebeest, and antelopes, is definitely not a joke. Namibia accounts for 2 big national parks, namely Etosha and Namib-Northcliffe, known for its wild sand dunes. With over 300 national parks spread across 54 countries, it's safe to say all African countries are turning a profit due to tourism. And most importantly, it has given opportunities to African people and has employed over 6.5 million people. So then, when does the poverty start to kick in? The outside perception of Africa is starving children and underdevelopment. So, is that truly the reality of Africa? No! What's wrong with you? Are you dumb? The reality is, these pictures are documented by humanitarian organizations like UNICEF that travel to places that are in need of help to actually get more funding. But definitely, this is not a reflection of how we live around here. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're broke, but we're not poor. We don't have the latest iPhone, but we have clothes on our back. And that's the most important thing. Therefore, the notion that there is no employment in Africa is wrong. Me and you might not be employed, but there are 530 people in Africa that wake up every day and go to work for a thriving economy. African governments are responsible to see to it that their respective economies do not crumble. That's why they partake in international trade. And major players in the international trade are South Africa, Egypt, Algeria, and Nigeria. What exactly are they trading? Well, let's find out. One thing we know about Africa is that it's loaded with undiscovered minerals. So it only makes sense that one of its major practices is mining.
The second largest diamond ever found, a rough 2,492 carat stone, has been unearthed in Botswana at a mine owned by the Canadian firm Lucara Diamond.
It's no surprise that African countries make international headlines due to their unique discoveries. Well, the biggest diamond, the Cullinan diamond, was discovered in South Africa. But that was stolen from the South African people. Speaking of Africa and big things, I too know a few things about that. Because I have the ZBC, the Zimbabwe's biggest. There are plenty of minerals to go around, like copper, iron, nickel, lead, and aluminium. South Africa being the biggest distributor of both platinum and chromium. Cobalt is also found in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with countries like Nigeria, Egypt, and Libya being major producers of oil in the African continent. There's also plenty of agricultural practices done in Africa due to its exceptionally fertile soil. We grow crops like barley, wheat, cassava, maize, and plenty of citrus fruits, which are enjoyed amongst ourselves and others are exported. Zimbabwe is the biggest distributor of tobacco in the world. Renewable energy production continuously makes its revolution in Africa. There is also thermal and hydroelectrical power production to ensure that there is enough power supply for residential and industrial purposes. All this ensures to local and foreign investors that Africa is a place to do business and proves to be very lucrative and simultaneously creates employment for the African people. Africa has been resilient in shaping and developing of young minds to ensure that our tomorrow is improved and also in safe hands. Building of industries and infrastructural development is continuously taking place. Zimbabwe recently went on a shopping spree worth 17 million to improve its major road networks. Also taking up renovations to improve its border post that it shares with South Africa and making improvements to the Mbudzi interchange. Kenya is building a 969-kilometer railway worth just under 10 billion. Rwanda has made great progress in its construction of the Kigali Innovation City worth over 300 million. Egypt has been working on building a new administrative capital city. Here's something that you don't want to hear, Egypt. You're one of us. Grand Inga Dam in Congo. Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam worth over 5 billion. Mpanda Nkua hydropower in Mozambique are some of the projects which are being taken out, which are expected to produce power for the nations and other countries respectively. With all this, Africa can only look forward for the future and what's yet to come. But in the meantime, it is very important to appreciate what we already have and to be gracious and grateful for the things that we receive. Let me take this moment to acknowledge African nations like South Africa, Nigeria, and Egypt that are doing exceptionally well in the global community and have managed to stand out. And to all my people, comparison is the thief of all joy. Meaning, don't be influenced by what other countries have. That will only steal joy from you. And that's why we think Africa is so poor when really we are doing just fine.